Good morning, church. Great to be with you online today. Thank you for all your wonderful thoughts and prayers. Last week when I got the news that no one wants to get, that I had COVID, I didn't know exactly what I was going to do. I knew I couldn't preach. So we called Gary Sinclair, a good friend of ours over in Indianapolis. He said he would be glad to come over and preach a message, but he was tied up last weekend. So he's volunteered to do that for us this week. He said he would come over and do it in person and tape the message, but we thought, no, Gary, don't do that. Just send us the message you preached last weekend. And that's what he's done. He got with his tech guy and sent us the message on entitlement, that I think it's something that we all need to really hear. But he sent it over for us to take a listen. So he's going to present that message in just a moment. Just keep in mind, next week I'm back on track. I'll be starting a brand new sermon series on 1 Peter, which is so relevant for the days that we're living in. I'm excited about that. I'm really excited to get back with my church family. I love you all, appreciate you all so much. But take a listen to Gary's message. I believe it'll bless your heart. God bless you and have a wonderful week.
Well, how many of you either here or listening online would be first responders? You're in the medical community particularly, or maybe police or fire. You're in the first responder group. Would you raise your hand? You can do this at home if you want. Great, we have a few. Can we just thank these people for continuing to do this for a long time? Wow, thank you so much. And it's not over yet, I know. I would bet that most of you in that group, or maybe just in life in general, have run into someone who's overly entitled. Here are a couple from the medical community, a couple cartoons. First one says, I realize that your finger hurts and that you're angry because another person went before you, but did he have an arrow sticking out of his head? A little entitled there. Or the person in the bed, I pressed this button over 3 seconds ago. What took you so long to get here? Yeah, we've all run into entitled people like that. But you know, entitlement is not just in the medical community or even in the first responding community. You see it with drivers today. This literally happened to us just a couple weeks ago. We were on 21st Street or 200 North and pulled up to a light. Jackie was with me. I look in my rearview mirror, kind of see what's going on, because I hear this car just kind of squealing and going fast, and it had come out of a driveway just behind us. But we had to stop at the light. Okay, so I can just see that he's still revving his engine in a hurry. The light changes. I turn right, and I mean, as I'm going around the corner, he is going around me into the turn lane for the other direction, crosses 2 yellow lines, and flies by me. And I just, made a comment to Jackie, what a jerk, or something, and let him go. Until he went over this little rise in the road, and I hear brakes squealing, and I see smoke literally coming up above the road until we got to that rise. And we looked down, and there he is trying to stop because there is a car making a left-hand turn. And he almost hit him. I mean, it was so close. He could have killed that guy, could have killed himself. We could have been in that accident, all because what? Well, I think he must have felt, I'm entitled to the road. Get out of my way, right? Yeah, see, here's what entitlement, if you don't think entitlement's a problem, just go cut in front of somebody accidentally in the drive-thru, right, at McDonald's or somewhere, and you'll hear about it. Somebody will say, oh, no, how'd you get in front of me? See, here's what entitlement is. It's the belief that we inherently deserve something no matter what. And I don't know about you, but I sense this is a growing thing in our culture. I mean, we've always had it to some degree. Some have said, well, it's limited to one age group. It's just those millennials, you millennials, or, it's one sex or the other. No, the studies show it's across the board. I would guess if you're a parent or a grandparent, you see some of this. Kids are saying, well, I got to have that, I got to have this. And it used to be growing up that we all said, well, everybody's doing it, Mom or Dad, or everybody has one of those. But here, I think it's going farther today. This entitlement idea is so many moms and dads feel like, oh no, I'm just giving it to them because I don't want them to go without. What would happen to them if all the other kids have that, but they don't have that? Guess what? That's not so good for them. I'll talk about that in just a moment. Many of those same kids grow into adults, and you know what they think? They think that their college, their employer, the other adults in their life should treat them the same way. If I want it, if I need it, I'm supposed to have it. You know, working for it and waiting on it, that's like old school. Nobody does that anymore, right? I think it's becoming a growing thing. That's why we're calling this message Entitlement. Not that there isn't a place for it. I'll get to that in a minute. But here was an article in Psychology Today just 5 years ago. It was called 9 Signs Your Child Has Entitlement Issues. Now, every kid does some of these things now and then. They weren't saying that. But if you regularly see your child doing a lot of these things, yeah, maybe there's a little bit of an entitlement problem. They expect bribes or rewards for good behavior all the time. They rarely or never lift a finger to help. They're more concerned about themselves than others. They pass blame every time something goes wrong. Oh, that's so-and-so's fault. They can't handle any disappointment. They need a treat to get through the store. Now, I have a question with this one. If my wife wants me to go to Michael's, I need a treat. So I'm leaving that one off, just saying. Expect to be rescued from their mistakes all the time. They feel like the rules don't apply to them anymore, and they constantly want more and more. I don't know. We'll just have to think about that, but it's around. Adults do it too. Adult consumers, what do? We feel like we're entitled to the newest and the best deal on Black Friday or Cyber Monday, or wait for the best offer Wednesday, or whatever the next one is. They're going to come up, well, I need to get that. I should get that. And I talked about drivers. You know, I drove for Lyft for a couple of years, and so I was with other drivers all the time. There were times when somebody would go by me, and I would say to myself in the car, oh, that's right. All the lanes on I-465 were made just for you. I forgot. But you think, is that what you think? That no one else is on the road? I'm entitled to drive that fast. Or we spouses can be entitled to get our own way or have our choice or our decision always made. Employees can think they're entitled to more pay or the raise or the promotion, even if they're not the best person for that. Or Americans in general, we're pretty blessed here. Not perfect, but pretty blessed. We think we're entitled to have the government pay for so many things. They're called entitlement programs. They're not all bad. I'm not saying that. But or in a business, we think, well, I'm entitled to know what's going on, all the bosses, everything they know. Or even at church, I'm supposed to know everything, or I get to this. No. See, we're not entitled to all of that. In fact, I think we could break the outcomes of entitlement into a couple of categories. And then we're going to talk about how to maybe get out of that. One, people who are entitled do a lot more demanding than asking. More demanding than asking. See, we ought to try to make changes. We ought to ask for things that we might deserve, that we've worked hard for. Nothing wrong with that. But see, entitled people become demanders. Even in a restaurant, they might say, these eggs are terrible. I deserve better than that. I eat here all the time. And I'm going to take my business elsewhere. You know, and they just go into this whole pity party and anger thing. Pastor Ryan talked about anger a couple weeks ago. Yeah, that's another reason it happens, because we demand a certain result and we don't get it because we think we're entitled to that result. So some demand more than ask. Or secondly, they break rules instead of obeying. You know, it's like the drivers on the road I talked about. I don't need to obey the speed limit. I got to get to work. They need me. Or I don't have to pay tax on this money I earned. Hey, the government has more than it needs anyways. Just print more. I'm entitled to it. I don't have to get to my flight early. Here's what I've seen. Or 10 minutes before it leaves. I'm a preferred platinum, gold, star, business executive member or whatever, and so I should get extra privilege. And by the way, if you do get those extra miles, good for you. Just don't demand it. And then here's one more. This is a little more subtle. People can quietly, they don't get all angry, they don't get all upset, but they quietly expect special privileges or treatment. Everywhere they go, they think, I'm special. I'm above everything else, you know. I should get it in the airport, in the restaurant, in the waiting room, in a business office, in a medical office, in a famous person's locale. In fact, think about this in light of Pastor Ryan's message series that he just finished, you know, about unoffendable. Guess what? You want to be less offended, live less entitled. Right? If you go, hey, I'd like that, but I'm not going to demand that. I can live without that. We'll get to that more in a minute. Then you'll be less offended when you don't get it. Now, there are a few things. Some of you are saying, well, wait, aren't we entitled to some things? Yeah, there are a few. Our forefathers wrote these down in a thing called the Bill of Rights. There are certain things that, yes, we're entitled to. At least the country tries to make sure everybody gets that. But when it's all said and done, here's the reality. When it's all said and done, there's very little we're entitled to. We've got to understand that, and it's okay. If we try to live as though we've got all these entitled things, it's going to be like a black hole. We're going, well, I didn't get that, I didn't get that, I didn't get, my kids didn't get that. And you're just going to be really frustrated. We're not entitled to have life always turn out well. We're not. We're not entitled to always get what we want when we want it. No, we're not. We're not entitled to always receive, insurance or medical care or credit, even though we may deserve it, or maybe we were in line in the drive-thru before someone else. We're not always entitled. See, as Christians, we're to live a different kind of life. Not an entitled life, but don't miss this, a life of grace, a grace life. We're to enjoy what we have and go after what we can in appropriate ways. And when we get it, say, no, I didn't get that because I was entitled. I got that out of God's grace, or even someone's grace because God let it. Do you ever have this happen? I've said this. When God does something really cool, amazing, provision or whatever, what do we say? I know you're going to be able to fill this in. God is good. And He is. But is He only good because we got that day? Was He more good that day so we got that best? No, I don't think so. We got that not because He's good. He's always good. We got that because of His grace. The better answer would be, God is so gracious. So gracious. See, that's the unentitled mentality. So I want to give you 6 or 7 things that non-entitled people do and are. If they live that way, if they follow, and we'll use scripture for each one, what could that look like? And these aren't the only ones, but I think there are 6 or 7 pretty important ones. So here we go. Here's what non-entitled people do. Check yourself, see how you're doing. None of us will be perfect on these. Number 1, they joyfully keep their commitments. They joyfully keep their commitments. They're a kind of people most of us would want working for us. We want them to be our friends. We'd want them to be on our work team or whatever. Not like the people in this Bible parable. I want to read from Matthew chapter 20. You can look at it in more detail later. And some of you know this parable, but it's pretty interesting. Here we go. For the kingdom of heaven is like the landowner who went out early one morning to hire workers for his vineyard. He agreed to pay the normal daily wage and sent them out to work. At 9 o'clock in the morning, he was passing through the marketplace and saw some people standing around doing nothing. So he hired them, telling them he would pay them whatever was right at the end of the day. So they went to work in the vineyard. At noon and again at 3 o'clock, he did the same thing. At 5 o'clock that afternoon, he was in town again and saw some more people standing around, and he asked them, "Why haven't you been working today?" And they replied, "Because no one hired us." The landowner told them, "Then go out and join the others in my vineyard." That evening, he told the foreman to call the workers in and pay them, beginning with the last workers first. When those hired at 5 o'clock were paid, each received a full day's wage. When those hired first came to get their pay, they assumed they would receive more. But they too were paid a day's wage. When they received their pay, they protested to the owner, "Those people worked only 1 hour, and yet you paid them just as much as you paid us who worked all day in the scorching heat." And he answered one of them, and he said, "Friend," and that's an interesting response, "Friend, I haven't been unfair. Didn't you agree to work all day for the usual wage? Take your money and go. I want to pay this last worker the same as you. Is it against the law for me to do what I want with my money? Should you be jealous because I'm kind to others? So those who are last and I will be first then, and those who are first will be last." See, non-entitled people make a commitment and they stick with it no matter what. It doesn't matter how others compare. It doesn't matter what others got. They're thankful, there's a key word, they're thankful for what they got, not jealous about everyone else. Now, again, I said, if you get airline benefits, you get other advantages, great. You worked for them, you saved for them, super. But it's God's grace. And when you feel like it's God's grace anyways, then when you make a commitment with, and there are exceptions, but with all possibilities, as much as you can, you say, "I'm keeping that commitment." Many famous people, and I'm not condemning all of them, many don't do this, but many do. What do they do? Actors, athletes, musicians, ever notice? They make a commitment, 6-year contract, $30 million. I think I could live on that, don't you? But then, so-and-so, another actor, musician, somebody famous, gets more. They want to break their contract. I want to start over. I should be getting that. And they're in the papers and they're online and griping about it. Now, again, not all of them do that. But that's entitlement. It's like they got it, so I'm supposed to have it. When you're not entitled, you keep your commitments. That's the kind of people I want working for me. I hope you do too. Number 2, they gladly give from their resources. We talk about giving every week. But if we think that we're supposed to have so much, I worked for this, this is mine, blah, 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 we're not going to give, at least we're not going to give cheerfully. Now, should we plan and save and all of that for the future? You bet. But many people today, just aren't willing to give freely. Listen to 2 Corinthians chapter 9. You must each decide in your heart how much to give. But don't give reluctantly or in response to pressure, for God loves a person who gives cheerfully. When we start to figure out how fun it is to give, and you don't have to give a lot, most of us don't have a lot. If you do, you can give more, but it's so fun to give away, to give what you have, and do it cheerfully. But you won't do it. I won't do it if we think, well, I'm just entitled to this. I'm supposed to have so much, so here we go. Be smart about it, but give cheerfully. Number 3, faithfully do things well. Not only do non-entitled people keep their commitments, they prepare, they do the best they can do, they practice, they go the extra mile, they keep learning, they help others succeed, they communicate clearly, they say, I want to be the best that I can be. Colossians 3:23, I love this verse. Work willingly at whatever you do, as though you were working for the Lord rather than for people. If we were to think of everything we did for God this way, to go, like here, if you were all gone and there was one person in the audience I knew every time I spoke, and you sat right there and it was Jesus, I'd prepare extra well. I think I have, but see, it's so easy to go, oh, I've got that job, and they need me every week, and no one else is going to do it, so I'll just throw something together here on Saturday night and hope it works. And granted, we all have those moments when that's it's an exception. I'm not talking about that. But I'm saying most of the time, non-entitled people say, I'm doing the best I can do on this. When God was giving instructions in the Old Testament for the tabernacle and then later the temple, go back and read some of that kind of boring stuff, and you'll find out that God said, find the best craftsman to make this. God wasn't into crummy. He was into the best. And all what he's asking us to do is not be better than everybody else. We don't have to be exorbitant. Just do the best you can do. Some of you heard me say this, and I'm not saying every speaker should do this, but when I give a message like today, I've already preached it 6 times. Not to people. Well, my wife maybe hears it in the other room. I do it 5 or 6 times because I just want to be as prepared as I can be. Not perfect. I'm not. A lot of people better than me. I'm just saying that's what non-entitled people do. Number 4, they love people radically. Love people radically. See, entitled people only love people if they love them back. They only really love them or like them if they agree with them. Say, well, I'm entitled to my opinion. I'm entitled to my way, and I don't care what anybody else thinks. Non-entitled people love people even if they aren't on the same page. We all know 1 Corinthians 13, or many of us do. The love chapter, we hear it at weddings. Love is what? Patient and kind and gentle, not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. There's a long, great list. But we have a lot of this in our culture today that says, you better agree with me, but I'm not going to agree with you. And if you don't agree with me, then I have the right to go online, to, call you names, take your stuff, whatever. See, that's entitlement. And non-entitled people say, no, I'll love you anyways. I was talking with a pastor the other day, and we were probably on a different page somewhere, but we really, not a lot, a really good guy. I like him. He's my friend. But I said to him, if somebody said to me, hey, Gary, what do you think of blank? And I was pretty sure that person and I were going to be totally opposite. They would not like my answer. Here's what I would say first. You don't have to say it, I'm just saying. I would say to them, hey, listen, I don't think you and I are on the same page. I'll be glad to tell you what I think, but I need to know something first. If you and I are totally in disagreement on this, will you still be my friend? Because if not, then I'm not interested. Because see, that's what non-entitled people do. They say, I want to love you anyways. That's a big thing, big hard thing in this culture, but we got to do it. Number 5, they leave revenge to God. Leave revenge to God. They don't have to get even. I mean, I kind of want to be the person who sees somebody get it, If somebody goes flying by me at 105 miles an hour on I-65, and that has happened, I'm kind of looking for the police car going, so nail him. I want to see him. My mom used to say this. I know that God says in the Bible, vengeance is mine, but she said, I want to see it happen. And I'm sorry, I'm sort of the same way. Romans 12:19, dear friends, never take revenge. Leave that to the righteous anger of God. For the scriptures say, I will take revenge. I will pay them back, says the Lord. We aren't entitled to be the punishers, so to speak. Unless somebody, as parents and children, there's punishment, but it's not revenge. It's out of love. That's different. James 4:12 says, God alone who gave the law is the judge. He alone has the power to save or to destroy. People die in Indianapolis and in our area every day. Why? Because of revenge. It's tragic, isn't it? Our city's breaking records on this. And I don't want to say nobody's talking about it, but a lot of people aren't even talking about that part of the problem. That's what entitled people do. They get revenge. We don't. Number 6, they work hard for what they have. They work hard. See, entitled people think they are owed help or certain benefits. I'm not taking that job, some will say, because that only pays so much per hour, and I'm worth way more than that. I'm going to just wait it out until I can get what I deserve. In the meantime, could somebody pay my bills for me? Wait a minute, time out. Entitlement. Now, there's always exceptions. Our country helps people who can't do that. I get it, and we should. We have spent trillions of dollars over the years helping people. There's no country in the world that helps as much as we do. I'm not talking about that. But listen to this challenge. I didn't write it. 2 Thessalonians to this challenge. I didn't write it in chapter 3. Even while we were with you, we gave you this command. Those unwilling to work, who can, implied, will not get to eat. We command such people, Jesus Christ, to settle down and work to earn their own living. Here's the other benefit of this, folks. God knew from the beginning of mankind that when we do something that matters, we're better off. Mentally, we're better off. Physically, we're better off. Again, I realize some can't do that. But there's something good about earning your way, even if it's not what you want right then. God can handle that too. God can handle that too. Well, one more. Non-entitled people speak more words of life than words of death. What am I talking about? See, we said entitled people are demanders. So when they don't get their way, what do? They get angry, they yell, they put others down, they demand their rights, they make others look bad, they try to control people with their words, they always have something negative to say, they make a scene, they call people names. Those are words of death. You say, where are you getting that from? Proverbs 18. The tongue can bring life, can bring death or life. Our words are powerful. Words are powerful. Words of life, however, are things like, I'm proud of you. I respect your views, even though they're different than mine. Let's agree to disagree. If I had it to do over again, I'd pick you for my friend. Way to go. See, there's a big difference. People who are not entitled are way more willing to say words of life, even to people that they're not on their page. What if we did that more? What if we had those kind of conversations that everybody talks about, but very few have? What if we led the way on that? See, here's the summary of this. It's okay to desire something. It's okay to desire something. We ought to, make changes. If we see a problem, we ought to try to intervene and go to the right people. That's all good. And I'm not suggesting it's not. But entitled people have a different D word. You've heard me say it several times. What is it? They demand. They don't just desire. They demand change. They believe that if their demand isn't met, their well-being, their health, even life or the life of someone they care about will be in jeopardy. If my kids don't have that, they'll never get into whatever school, or they'll never get a great job, or whatever. I got good news for you. Most of your demands and my demands are not necessary or life-threatening. Most of them are not. Most of us have been on an airplane. I won't ask you to raise your hand. I would think most of us have. I fly a good bit. But every time you get on an airplane and they start taxiing out to the runway, what are the flight attendants talking about? Safety, right? And they're putting on the life jackets. That's one of the things they do, and they show you how to blow it up. And so if you land in the water, and we think, that would never happen, until Captain Sully landed that plane in the Hudson River a few years ago. So let's say they say that. You're on the plane, and they say, hey, here's your life jacket. It's under the seat or above or whatever. And you go, great. I was entitled to a life jacket on this flight. Your plane lands in the water somewhere. It looks like you're going to be okay, but everybody needs a life jacket because you're going to have to get out, and you're going to get in this water, and you want to be safe. So you reach for your life jacket, and there isn't one there where they told you it was. And you're going, excuse me, and everybody's putting them on, and kind of anxious. And excuse me, I don't have a life jacket. And they say, well, we don't have any extras. I'm sorry, that's all we got. What would go on inside of you right then? Right in then, you would go, my life my future, my goodness is in jeopardy. Why? Because I didn't get what I was entitled to. The good news, folks, is there's very little in our lives that's that threatening if we don't get it. No, there isn't very much. What God says is, no, live a life of grace. Go after what you want. He says he'll meet the desires of our heart, but not the demands. And be a servant. Serve people instead of demand. There are 4 words in Hebrew for servant. They're kind of interesting, and each one will give you a little nuance of maybe what servanthood would look like. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these. I'm not a Hebrew scholar, but here they are. One of them is ebed. It's being totally at the disposal of someone else, at least for a time. See, non-entitled people are willing to do that. They say, well, somebody needs something right now. Okay, I'm yours for a while. Great. Doesn't matter. You tell me what to do. That's the ebed servant. There's abad. This is a person who's willing to give up certain rights at times to work in the field or the temple. They needed these servants because there was some grungy work to be done in both of those places. And so they would go, I don't get to do that for a while? Nope, we need you to do this right now. That was the abad servant. Or sakir. There were some paid professional servants, and it was okay to get paid. It's okay for us to get paid for certain things. That was a servant in those days. And there was one more called sharath. They had to do pretty menial tasks, but they knew there was a bigger goal. And they said, okay, I'll be a part of that. They were sharath servants. There's a man who went on a trip with us to Russia a few years ago. As you know, I go to Russia a lot. We helped build a building over there. And so we were going to dedicate this new building that over a bunch of years we'd given money for and helped their workers to get some work. So we went and took 9 or 10 people, and we were going to do this service. I was going to speak at this dedication in their building, but there was some other work that needed to be done. So they said, well, could you come and do a few things that we haven't been able to do yet? We went, sure. It was just menial kind of stuff, painting and putting little, concrete and caulk and just dusting and cleaning and being down in a basement, pretty grungy stuff, but we said, of course we'd love to do that. So we had a few extra days. We did all of that leading up to the service. Much of the time, I worked next to a man I'll call John. That wasn't his first name, but he was then and still is Dr. John, PhD. He is one of the foremost animal experts in the world. And eventually he became the president of a Big Ten university. It's a guy I worked next to for 3 or 4 days doing all this stuff. I would go to a basketball game now and then at that school after he became the president. And so I like to mess with people. And so I would see him in his beautiful, perfect, wonderful seats. And at halftime, I would make my way down to where he was sitting. And of course, he'd say, hi, oh, hey, Gary, and his wife would be there. And I'd say, hey, Dr. John, how are you? And we'd chat for a minute. And I'd say, Dr. John, your security stinks. I said, how can I just walk up to the president of a university and nobody ever said anything? So we mess around and laugh. I am so glad that he didn't feel entitled. I'm so glad that he went, I'm a special person. I'm not doing that. He was one of the most productive people on the entire trip. Why? Because he wasn't entitled. See, Jesus said to us, look, there are really 2 things that I want you to do. Love others and love God. Love God with all your heart and soul and mind. Love your neighbor as yourself. Entitled people don't do that, right? No, it's pretty simple. And I don't know about you, but if we were just willing to say, God, you're in charge. You'll supply my needs. You're the one who I trust. You're the one who provide for me. Even if I don't get what I'm supposed to get, then we'll live a life of grace. And we won't be saying he's good so much, though he is. We'll say, God, thank you for your grace. Thank you that I get to do this. And then we'll keep our commitments, I think. We'll give our resources away. We'll faithfully do things well. We'll love people radically. We'll leave the revenge to God. We'll work hard for what we have and speak words of life. I don't know, maybe all of you do all those things. If you do, keep doing them then and be encouraged. But maybe you'd say, there's an area there that I've been living kind of this entitled life. I got to stop that. Then in these next few moments, I'm going to pray, and then you're going to hear a great song. And would you just say, God, I need to give that to you. I have been trying to live this kind of entitled life about me, about my kids, about whatever, and I want to turn a corner. He'll help you then. Do it. Take the first step and say, it's going to be a new day. And I guarantee it's going to free you up to have more joy and more peace, feel less demanding and angry, and say, thanks, Lord. Live a life of grace. Let me pray. Father, thank you for your word. Thank you for your challenge. I know I'm not perfect when it comes to entitlement, but I'm so thankful that you've entitled us to salvation. You've entitled us to Jesus, to be one of your family. And so may we love you better, love you more, and may we love people. And may we show it even today, even this week, in a new, fresh way. Give us strength. May we surrender, as we sang a little bit ago. Our whole life, all the things we think are ours, may we just give them back to you. We'll thank you in the name of Jesus. Amen.